Hi, Maneck. Welcome to the Hedge Storytellers series. Why don't we get started with, what problem or you're trying to solve with Recruitnet?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Shiv.
Yeah.
It's great to be here in Hong Kong. So Recruitnet, we are a search engine for jobs. Our mission is we help people find jobs. So right now we have 25 million jobs online, all posted within 30 days across 50 countries. Every day we send out 5 million job alert subscriptions out to people for jobs. So there's a lot of jobs out. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of back-end processing. There's a lot of stuff happening, people applying to jobs. And what we do is we work with that data. We collect that data. We make the process more efficient, and we just aim to provide a good job search experience. So a use case for this to think about how it works is, let's say, you say, hey Siri, show me all the newest jobs for IT security in New York in the last 10 days that pay over 200,000.
Right.
And you get a list.
Wow.
That's great. So, and then you say, hey Siri, how many of those are from Apple? Oh, there's 10 from Apple. That's great. Can you send those to me? And then the AI kicks in and says, by the way, people who searched for or applied for security jobs at Apple also searched for these jobs at LinkedIn. Have a look at these, right? So it's that's kind of the use case, because there's so much data. We work with that data. We manipulate that data. We apply layers of matching on it to make it accessible and provide smart recommendations. And we work on the back end with all of that.
Excellent. And then are there specific markets that you're focused on? Obviously, Hong Kong being a big one, but it sounds like you have other markets too that you're focused on.
Yeah, so we've always launched it with a global approach. So initially we launched in Southeast Asia. So we were never just Hong Kong centric. So, with technology, you can really, you can leverage and scale easily.
Right.
So we launched in Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia at one go. Then we moved on to the US, to UK, to Europe. Our latest release was in Nigeria.
Wow.
Which has been great. And, only because it's such a large market. Right. It's really untapped. It's a market that people are going online. I read somewhere that the potential size, the population in Nigeria is larger than the US, France and the UK combined. Just the population in Nigeria. And I think by 2040, it's estimated that population-wise, Nigeria will be the third largest country after China and India.
Wow.
So, it's a big market. And so what we do is we kind of scale out our technology where we think we can grow.
Yep.
So, and a lot of our growth is organic. So we just let the systems run and it just works through the cloud.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, since you are running a recruitment platform, you probably get to see some very interesting trends, market trends, whether it's in recruiting or jobs. Are there any trends or market insights that you think, is there anything interesting or surprising that you're seeing?
I would say that, I think there's some global trends, right?
Yeah.
I think that all roads lead back to tech at this point, right? Yep. And if you break that down, in most cases, it all breaks down to software at the end, right? So if you're a large established player, you're thinking now about how you can be selling online. Right. If you're a Walmart, or if it was Toys R Us that thought things out better, you're thinking about how are we selling online, right? So you need to think very seriously about your tech strategy, your online strategy. So that rises up in importance, right? So the skills, again, the tech skills. Now, if you're a tech company, you're predominantly driven by technology. Right. So it comes down to tech. So I think the key trend is everything is all about the technology now. Right. So it's software and the ecosystem around that. So networking, the layers that run the servers, the routers that connect the internet together, software to build the products, security to ensure everything is fine. Right. So I think that's really where the growth is, and I would say soft skills. On top of that, it's tech skills and soft skills. Right. Very nice.
Yeah. And tell me, how did you come about starting Recruit.net? Because you have an interesting story. You've had a very interesting background. So maybe share sort of how did you arrive at solving this particular problem?
I've always been a geek, a tech geek. So I love computers, and you know, as a kid, my grandfather got me an Atari 400, and I would, you know, type in basic programming. I'm not a programmer or an engineer, but it's always been something that's fascinating to me. So what I wanted to do when I graduated college was something that brought the world of business together with technology. So that's what I was interested in. I like business, and I like entrepreneurship and opportunities, and I like technology. So my first job was working with a bank in a client technology related area, and I realized quite quickly after a year and a half that it wasn't the right thing for me. And what happened was that the way I got into recruitment was that there was a lot of demand for people with very specific technical skills to work in financial companies. But there's very limited supply because it's a very specialized sector. And the firm I was working for were bringing a lot of people in from overseas, so bringing to Hong Kong from New York and London and being based here. And it was almost serendipitous, right? Sometimes opportunities just present themselves. So a good friend of mine was from Germany, and every day he'd complain to me and say, man, I can't stand it. I don't want to work here, you know, I'm so fed up. But he was very specialized in what he did. And at the same time, I noticed that some of the competitor banks were looking for exactly the type of person that he was. The job description that he was doing is like he was a senior Unix administrator for derivative trading systems. So most people wouldn't even know what that was or what that person did. And these guys were just trying to find people like this. This guy was sitting right next to me, and it went on and on and on. He was complaining the market was crying out for this type of person. So one day I just picked up the phone because it was bothering me, and I called a number and I said, hey, look, I know exactly what you're looking for, and I can help you find this guy. And he was like, great, come over, bring your business terms, and let's talk. And it kind of happened from then. I didn't have any business terms, and I wasn't in the business, but I went to talk to him, and that kind of transitioned into that area. So that's kind of how that happened. It was kind of organically just presented itself. I'm curious, sort of, how do you, tell us a little bit about how you built your team, what's the composition of the team, and then how you mentioned that you want to scale. You're not looking to hire a lot of people, but you really are scaling your platform. So I think the way we look at it is not how many people do you have, but how many servers do you have, how many machines do you have, and how efficient are those machines, right? So we have 50 servers on DigitalOcean. We have servers on the IBM cloud. We have servers on Amazon. We're moving more of our stuff to DigitalOcean because the experience has been good. So we're tech focused, right? So we want less people. We want people doing things that that highly skilled people doing things, managing our machines. So managing our bots, our crawlers, our searches, to optimizing that and doing things that you would need 10 or 20 people to do. So that's our approach, right? It's really engineering based and looking at scaling cloud-based technology to maximize efficiency. So that means being cash flow positive and making money. Sometimes we lose that, right, as a startup. And when we talk to startups, the question comes back to, hang on, but what's your ultimate? It's all great, but how do you plan to turn a profit? Or how do you plan to make money, right? Sometimes that question gets lost, but we've always brought that to the forefront, right? Ultimately, a business is a business, and at some point you have to think about profitability. So we leverage machines, we scale machines, we try to keep the team lean, and that's our approach. Excellent. And speaking of profitability and startups, one of the questions that our viewers or listeners often want to know, funding comes in different ways and flavors, and not all startups essentially raise a lot of money. And we were talking earlier that you haven't gone down the route of at least on this venture to raise a lot of money. So what are your thoughts, some pros and cons of raising money or doing it yourself or bootstrapping? How do you think about what advice? So Shiv, we didn't raise money because Recruit.net kind of grew organically as a passion project. So it was a side project. Having experience working with software engineers and working with and recruiting engineers is fortunate for me because I have access to great talent, right? And that's what I love. That's what I love doing, working with engineers. And so while I was building our software recruitment business, we saw that there was an opportunity. Well, let me back up just a little bit, right? So our tagline is we help people find jobs, as I mentioned, and the reason for that is when you're working in a staffing company as in executive search or in recruitment, actually the numbers of people you can help are quite limited. It's quite small, right? Because in a very specialized area like ours, you're really going after a very specific skill set.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
However, when you are, a recruiter or you're in the recruitment business, the perception is that you can help everybody find a job. So, my brothers, my sisters, my mom, my dad, they're like, talk to Maneck, he'll help you find a job. I can't, right? So it's impossible, right? Yeah. It was what we do is so specialized, right? So we would start directing people, hey, look, you can try this or you can try that. And what we noticed also was a lot of direct employers were posting jobs directly on their websites.
Right.
And that was awesome. That was great, right? Because you could actually go to hsbc.com or microsoft.com and just go to careers and all the jobs were posted, right? And they were fresh, great jobs from great companies. So we would say, hey, look, you're into marketing, go to P&G and go to their site. Actually, all the jobs are there. The Hong Kong jobs are there, Singapore jobs, and go there. I mean, we can't help you because it's not what we do, but go online. So having access to engineers, I sat down with some of my guys and I said, look, can we just get that information and update it and make it searchable and then just let people use our product to find all of these jobs? And we kind of spec'd it out. We use a pure open source framework. Lucene for search, we use, which Yahoo was using. An open source Linux platform, so it didn't cost a lot of money. And we built a prototype and it scaled. And, we started adding more jobs, and at the same time, more content was coming online. And that's how it kind of how it grew. And that's where it is today, really. So at some point, I decided that this is worthy of my full attention now. And so I transitioned. And
you had enough traction such that funding wasn't really necessary. You were able to fund your growth.
So back to the funding question. I think that we never raised funding because it grew organically, and because the economics were so good, we didn't need to raise money. And so we chose not to, largely because if running a business is fun, it's so much better. And sometimes investors can bring in complexities and obligations and complications. Not always. Sometimes it's exactly perfect to raise money. But for us, it was going well, and I had hands in other areas as well. I was still involved in my other business. So we made the decision not to raise money. So in terms of, I think, and in hindsight, did we miss out on some opportunity for accelerated growth? Possibly. Maybe yes, maybe no. So there's always two sides to the coin in terms of what you're going to do, right? I mean, if the traditional startup model is you have an idea, you have a founding team, you build what we call an MVP, a minimum viable product, you should demonstrate some traction, raise money, scale it up, and that's great. It's just that our story, our evolution with Recruit.net was a little bit different.
No, and it's good. It sounds like you're also more in control of your destiny to a certain degree because you don't have a lot of investors.
And there's always the opportunity to do that, right? I mean, it's not hard when you have a scalable, profitable business. To raise money if you choose to do that. So that's a direction we chose to take, and it was largely kind of serendipitous again. It just developed that way.
So one of the other things we were talking about, our viewers or listeners usually want to hear from founders, people who have started businesses, around books they're reading and people they find inspiration from. Do you have any sort of recommendations on perhaps books that you're reading or you would recommend to folks, and maybe touch on where do you get your inspiration from?
So I think in terms of business books, right, or business skill sets, there's a great book called Influence. I think it's by Cialdi. I forget his name. It's Cialdi, and it's really about persuasion, and it's about about skill sets and tools to help you be more persuasive, to help with sales, and I think it's a great resource, right? And I highly recommend that. Just in terms for every entrepreneur or startup to refine those soft skills, because I think that they're so important. What I also really liked was the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson.
Yeah.
I really like that because there's just so many takeaways, right? I mean, we all know the story of Apple, right?
Yeah.
And how he left, came back, the iPod was born, the iPhone was created, and at one point the highest capitalized company in the world, and it's just great to understand the backstory, the personality, what Steve Jobs was like. Wasn't necessarily the nicest guy, right? But a genius. He's that fine line between, I would say, an artist and an engineer, right? He kind of walked that middle ground in a way that a lot of people just don't have the capability to do, right? To see the artistic and intrinsic beauty in things, but be able to communicate that from an engineering perspective and to bring those worlds together, right? So, fantastic book in terms of just giving you insights into business and personalities. And the other book I like is, Noah Yuval Harari. He wrote Sapiens, Homo Deus. His most recent book, I think it's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Yeah. And it takes a lot of the themes which he talks about in his earlier books, and he addresses some of the current issues in society today. Yeah. So AI, machine learning, how our jobs, how safe are our jobs, right? What do you have to be worried about in terms of machines taking over your jobs? Fake news, the proliferation of fake news, all that kind of stuff, and he breaks it down into chapters, and it's just fantastic insights. And the other interesting thing about that writer is that what he says is that he does something called a vipassana meditation, which is a silent meditation, and usually it's done for 10 days, and it's extremely challenging to do. But what I read, and if I remember correctly, is he does a 30-day meditation.
Wow!
And I think it's once a year. I think it's 30 days, and I think that the only way you get that clarity to really get a good lay of the land and look at things so objectively is when you can totally step away. Yeah. And this is a guy, if you know any of his previous books away, I mean, it's such a thoughtful analysis of the state of the world, but given from a strategic viewpoint. Right. So this guy, he looks at things and presents them, and I think it's great reading.
So tell me, where do you get your inspiration from, or is there anybody that inspires you?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit boring like that. So for me, it's again comes back to engineers, right? And software engineers. So I love working with engineers and seeing what they're building and what problems they're trying to solve, and I like identifying those problems and then looking for engineering solutions to solve them, right. to make markets more efficient, to cut out middlemen, to improve processes, right? And you can do that very efficiently through engineering and through software solutions. So I get a lot of inspiration from talking to these guys. So at conferences like here I like going and finding out, hey, are you the founder, and right. Did you build this product? Right. Did you code it yourself? Right? Why did you do that? Yeah. Right? And that's fantastic for me. So yeah, a lot of inspiration. I learn a lot from that as well. In terms of more mainstream. Being here in Hong Kong, I'd never heard of a guy called Joe Rogan until recently. And I think it was only when he interviewed Elon Musk. Yeah. but it turns out that he's a famous comedian in the States, and he has a history with the mixed martial arts, and I think that guy's brilliant. I mean, so I started watching a lot of his podcasts, and I've learned so much. I mean, he can talk, and he's wicked smart. I mean, he can talk to the smartest quantum engineers and have questions with them, and he can also be sitting in a room and drinking whiskey and smoking a joint with comedians and just having a great time. Right. So the topics and his coverage area, I love listening to what he has to say, and I've learned a lot from his podcasts.
So one of the other things, our viewers and listeners want to learn from is, what are some of the lessons you have learned in building your business? So do you have any tips or any lessons that you'd like to share with others?
Sure. I think that the startup journey and in growing a business it's not easy, right? So you have to be prepared for ups and downs.
Right.
And I think one of the key takeaways from my experience is don't be attached to outcomes, right? And what I mean by that is whatever you're trying to do, you should do your best, right? And don't go short on that. Do your absolute best. Right. So if you're looking to find a job, make sure you've polished your CV. Make sure when you're applying for a job, make sure you know who you're talking to, right? Make sure you have the right skills. If you don't have the right skills, you can do some self-learning, and so do everything you can, right? And follow all the best practices. Right. Apply for a job, or if you're hiring, right? You do your best to hire. Yeah. But with the outcome, and then the other example, let's say you want to sell your house, whatever. What can you do? You hire the best broker. You make sure the condition is good, whatever it is. You do the best you can do, and then you let it go, because in the background things have to happen, right? Yeah. So someone has to come along. The marketplace has to open up and want that house at the right time for it to happen. Yeah. The right job has to present itself. The right employer has to see your CV, right? The right recruiter has to find your data and attach and find you. So you can only do the best that you can do, and you shouldn't go short on that. Yeah. But you should detach yourself from the outcome. Right. And just let it go, let it be, and trust the process. Right. And I find that sometimes that enables things to move quicker. Right. Rather than holding on to it and saying, hey, well, why is this not happening? Why is this not happening? Right? You
sort of like control the inputs that you control the inputs. You don't always control the outputs.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And don't go short on that. Yeah. But accept the reality that there's so much going on around us that all the time. Our stream of consciousness is just this stream of consciousness, but everything's moving in the background that we really effectively have no control over. Right. So we've done products, or we've looked to release products and features that it just hasn't come together. Right. We couldn't get the right team, the right person wasn't there, one issue after the other, and at the end of the day we said, okay, this is not working, right? Drop it. Other things were just at conception, and it just fell into place, right? And it just kind of worked, and it worked. And I think through life, this happens, right? Not just in the sphere of work, but in your day-to-day life, right? So I'm a big believer, right? So to your question, it's really, do your best, right? Be smart, arm yourself with information, and action is key, right? They don't skimp on the action. Everything is about doing. If you don't do, you don't get any results. So you got to get out there and make efforts and do things, right? And do your best, but then, let it go. Trust the process and understand there is a process out there that you ultimately can't control. And I think just psychologically, once you accept that, things work out better.
Yeah. How do you deal with, it sounds like you've had lots of successes, but even potentially failures along the way. So any advice to founders on how to deal with successes and failures as you sort of, as you're building your business?
Yeah, so, I think successes and failures, in every moment of the day, you have highs and lows as well, right? So I think you could apply that to the larger picture of life, right? It's just you roll with the punches, and when it's good, just enjoy it. Don't forget to enjoy it, right? Don't forget to enjoy the moments that you have. So I'd break it down to a moment-to-moment basis, really. I know that answers your question exactly, but it's and trying to keep an even keel, right? And understanding that everything is transient, everything is constantly moving. Yeah.
Are there any moments of failures or things that you were like, I wish, one of the other things that our listeners or viewers we usually like to learn is, other things that now that you would have loved to have known earlier, so you could have avoided some mistakes or pitfalls.
There's so many, right? I mean, so experience is cumulative, right? This is what experience is, right? And you're better off with the bad experiences too, right? The lessons learned make you stronger, right? So at the end of the day, it all adds up, right? And I would say that, so my process is looking back at something that didn't work out. Or, I hired this person, it didn't work out. But I look back and say, well, why did I hire this person? Because A, B, C, D. Was it the right decision? At that time it was. It didn't work out because A, B, C, D. Am I comfortable with what I did? I tried. And I say, well, look, if I hadn't hired him, I wouldn't have known. And I'd be sitting here today saying, I should have got that guy. It would have been totally different, right? So you let it go. It's, you just work through the process. So that's the kind of thing that I do. I'd look back, reassess, and if I didn't take that decision, that went wrong, would I have regret for not trying? And do I want to be carrying that regret right now?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Excellent, Maneck. This was great. Thank you for sharing all the wisdom and the learnings and the stories. You have a really amazing story in, having an organic business, and, you're helping thousands of people get jobs. So congrats on the success, and thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great chatting with you, and I hope you enjoy our beautiful city, Hong Kong.
Well, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.